Okay. So what we'll do is we're just going to I'm going to announce your name and come on up, and then I'll do a little intro once you're up here. But first, I'd like to welcome Jeff Harmon, co-founder and chief content officer at Angel Studios. Daniel Scarpino, CEO of Austin Post and the Post Malone Companies. And last but not least, Megan Crossland, who's the chief commercial officer at Built Brands. Excellent. So you can see, oh yeah, sorry Megan, it's a little obstacle course back there.
Far good.
Great, you can see why I'm excited. These are some pretty amazing brands, and we feel fortunate to have them with us today. So I wanted to just read a little introduction on each of you, and then we can get into the discussion. So Jeff Harmon, I mentioned, is a co-founder and chief content officer at Angel Studios. Now, Harmon brothers are legendary, so you will know these guys for sure. Jeff grew up on a potato farm in southern Idaho with 3 TV channels and no plans to make movies. He went on to help YouTube invent the skip ad button, co-found Harmon Brothers, the agency behind Squatty Potty, Purple, and Poopery, all amazing products, and built Angel Studios into a publicly traded company with over 2 million guild members. One of Angel's most successful releases was the movie Sound of Freedom, where they bypassed the traditional Hollywood studio system entirely, and I think they made a pretty penny on that movie as well. Jeff now leads content acquisition, guild voting, business development, and filmmaker relationships at Angel. So again, let's welcome him to the stage. Next, we have Daniel Scarpino, who's a friend of the agency. So glad he's here. He's the CEO of Austin Post and the Post Malone Companies. Daniel has built and led global brand marketing operations across 42 markets. He now runs a portfolio of companies spanning boat dealerships, CPG, experiential business, and master plan developments, with Austin Post as the flagship. Austin Post is Post Malone's legal name and his fashion label, which launched at a Paris runway show in September 2025 at Karl Lagerfeld's former mansion and is already on Costco shelves. It's moving fast. So let's welcome Daniel. And no, Posty won't be here today. We apologize. Finally, we have Megan Crossland, who's the Chief Commercial Officer at Built Brands. Megan has built her career in CPG, working for big companies on iconic brands. Have we heard of Mattel's Barbie? Probably. In Nestle, including Nescafe, Coffee Mate, and Nesquik, which is a family favorite around our house. And more recently, she's scaled some smaller challenger brands like Think, Lenny and Larry's, and now Built Brands. She joined Built 2 years ago, and in that time, the company has tripled in revenue, and they've done it profitably. It's incredible. She leads all commercial efforts, sales, marketing, and innovation, and has taken Built from a D2C first brand into club, mass, grocery, and convenience channels. So welcome Megan to the stage. Okay, so we thought it'd be fun just to kind of pepper in some videos, just so you can kind of see some of the brands as we go. So let's start. I'm gonna ask my first question to Daniel, so let's start with a little Post Malone video. Man, if I could only be so cool. So what we wanted to start with is kind of like the backstory behind brands. Like everyone in this room has been in the same situation where they're starting from zero and trying to figure out ways to make people who know nothing about you actually care about the brand. So I'm gonna start with you, Daniel. So Austin Post is built around a living, breathing cultural figure with already this massive, massive fan base. And I'm sure that's a gift and a constraint at the same time. How do you build a real brand identity around somebody who everyone already has such a strong, strong opinions about, and how do you make sure it doesn't feel like merch?
Yeah, well, it really is a challenge. There's no question. Like you mentioned, because Austin is this, big cultural icon, it comes with a lot of gifts. You get the gift of attention, right? So we have a lot of eyeballs on us. And that's great because it brings a lot of emotional connection from his fans and from people who admire him. The challenge is that it's going to feel like merch if we borrow from the fame too much. And it basically provides this thing where people already have an opinion of the brand before we've had a chance to create it. So that's the constraint that we're constantly battling. What's been interesting though is that not many people know that Austin Post is his real name. And so that's been kind of fun to play with. But
in fact, why don't you share the story that you and Phil had just a few weeks ago?
Yeah, when we were out in Nashville speaking on a panel, I forget the name of the conference, but anyway, we were out there speaking, and I just asked by show of hands who knows that Austin Post is Post Malone, and I think we had 3 people out of a crowd probably 3 times this size, and so it's definitely noticeable, right? But it is a challenge to try to bridge those 2 things. But what's been fun is because we're sidestepping that merch thing. If you think about merch in this way, merch is I like this person, and when you're building a brand, it's like I want to live in that world. Well, Austin is he's a very creative guy. He has so many different interests, and he's very knowledgeable about design. He's very knowledgeable about fabrics, about cuts. So he is very much driving this brand and where it's going. And so I think, that's the beauty of this, is that we really do have him as the source material to be able to build the brand.
That's amazing. Yeah, you definitely need to go check out the website. It's austin-post.com. They have some really fun merchandise there, some really fun clothing. So Megan, so for Built, they built its foundation as a DTC brand, and you've obviously since pushed into every major retail channel. And so my question is, when you made that shift, what actually changed about how you had to think about demand? And what do you think most DTC brands actually get wrong when they try to make that shift?
I mean, my whole career has been in retail, so it's second nature to me, so it's even easier for me to think about taking a D2C brand to retail because I know it so well. But what brands get wrong is that retail has a totally different risk structure, right? It's retail, D2C and marketplace are very iterative. You can try and fail without risk. Retail is not that way. So you really need to understand, have to have your fundamentals down. You need to have your price pack architecture. You need to have your channel strategy. You need to understand what the retailer's objective is, right? So that you can align your strategy with their strategy and make sure that everybody's being successful in the partnership. And then I think the third thing is to know you really do have to get it right. You don't have a lot of opportunities to get it wrong. So make sure you have the people that you're working with and surround you. Make sure they know retail and can have sort of experienced the trials and tribulations of it before you go.
That's amazing. Well, I think they're fortunate to have you with so much experience. I know Nick Greer, who's the founder of Built Bars, and when I asked him if they'd be willing to participate, and I said, who in your organization might come, he said, Megan's the person you want. She has so much experience, and you've done amazing things there.
Thanks.
So for Jeff, okay, so you helped pioneer viral video advertising at Harmer Brothers with some amazing campaigns that generated literally hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And you did it by creating ads that would run long, right? And so this is the interesting thing. You made content that was generally worth watching, but at the same time, you also helped build the skip ad button itself. So that sounds like a paradox. If that's not a paradox, I don't know what is. So you created the escape hatch, but then you created content that people didn't want to escape from, which is incredible. So what did that teach you about how audiences actually decide to pay attention?
I mean, the way we looked at it, this was 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, maybe 14 years ago? I don't know.
That's a long time. Very long time.
Yeah, the way we looked at it back in that time was just, it was very direct to consumer, meaning this is kind of the beginning of a business. And my thought was, is there a way to get the branding in with the direct consumer at the same time? And so in order to do that, you have to create direct consumer ads that are memorable, and we would say, will this ad be talked about around the dinner table? And so how do you get poopery to be talked about around the dinner table? How do you get the colon to be talked around the dinner table? So we flipped Squatty Potty. He only talks about ice cream in the ad with the pooping unicorn. He never mentions poop. It's just all ice cream metaphors. And it worked to get them to have this discussion. You have to break through all the noise. And so those were the things we were thinking about. And then the other piece is you have to have the structure of a sell all in one go, because these are brands nobody's ever heard of. Nobody had ever heard of Purple. Nobody had ever heard of Squatty Potty, or very few people had, and Poopery. And so you had to get it to where you need to get your frequency in and your brand recognition. If you look at those ads, they have the name is dropped over and over and over and over again. So by the end of 2 minutes or the end of 4 minutes, in some cases we experimented with 4-minute ads, you have taken them through the entire sale process and they're ready to buy. And then my argument to YouTube at the time, because they wanted to make 15-second and 30-second ads, is I said, you really need to give us a longer ad. And they're like, we can't. I said, well, let's just let them skip and then give me a longer ad. And I said, I don't care if only 6% or 10% of people are there at the end of the ad, as long as they're the 6 or 10% that are ready to buy. And yeah, that's how we thought about it at the time.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, you guys built an advertising category that people still try to replicate. You guys don't do any of that anymore, do you? Or you still have a little Harmon Brothers video production
The
going on?
agency's still running. I'm a passive partner at the agency and slowly getting phased out, because I haven't been an active partner at Harmon Brothers for quite a while.
You have enough to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have plenty to do for sure. If you look at those campaigns, which of those was, I would ask, your favorite to work on? Maybe the 3 that we mentioned of those, and then which was the most successful?
I think Squatty Potty was my favorite. The most successful was probably Purple. Just the price point is so different, and it became a much larger company. Tony and Terry, the inventors of Purple, they called me, I think 2 weeks after we ran the campaign, and Terry said, we were going to go bankrupt. Thank you so much for saving our company. And I remember thinking, would I have gotten paid if we succeeded? If we hadn't succeeded? Yeah, but there was this moment where Purple, they came to us with a mattress, and we didn't like it. And so we said, it's not good enough. And they're like, well, what can we change? And so we started suggesting a whole bunch of things. And the biggest thing we changed was there was a little cushion over the top of the Purple technology. And we said, move that to the top and only put a little piece of fabric over it so that people can actually feel it. And they're like, nobody wants to feel this weird stuff underneath. And I was like, actually, I think they do. I think that's what's going to make your brand different than everybody else's. So they moved it to the top, and they followed that, and our names ended up on the patent because of it. But they launched, and within 18 months, I think they were close to it was like $1 billion valuation within like 18 months.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you took what is really a considered purchase item, like a mattress, similar, that's what Max Connect does a lot of, considered purchase items. So it's something where it takes you a few weeks, a few months, even a year to decide to buy something. You took a considered item purchase in a mattress, and you turned that around so quickly. That's magic right there. So amazing. So I kind of want to shift now and just talk about the cost of growth. But before we do, I want to take a second to go ahead and introduce another brand. So let's watch a couple of built videos.
First, there was smooth, creamy peanut butter. And then, boom, chocolatey goodness. They came together in sweet, fluffy perfection. Peanut butter cup.
What the puff? This thing has 17 grams of protein.
I thought this was about dinosaurs. Fluffy, chocolatey, and packed with protein. What the puff? New peanut butter cup built puff.
Let's watch one more.
It's like fruity, marshmallowy, sour candy. Sweet and tangy at the same time. This is how sour was meant to be.
What the puff? 16 grams of protein?
It's the first of its kind.
Did you say it's your first time?
Tangy, fruity, and packed with protein. What the puff? Try new built sour puff.
I love that, and I'm so glad we got to rep the peanut butter puff because that is my go-to. We have them here at the office, and I mean, I remember talking, to your brand in the early days. They said we're not going after protein bars, we're going after candy bars, and I think that's where you guys have really carved out this niche, which is amazing. So Megan, let's start with you. When we talk about like the headline version of growth is usually really clean, right? People think, I've heard them say it was a 10-year overnight success. Right, where there's a lot that happened in that 10 years to actually when it finally ran. So, you and your team have tripled Built's revenue and quadrupled profitability in 2 years, and that kind of growth inside a company that's already moving is a challenge in and of itself. You're not building from zero, but you're scaling kind of when you're mid-flight. And so, what were the 2 or 3 things that had to change internally for that growth to happen and to be sustainable?
Well, I think you touched on it a little bit earlier, right? The mindset shift between D2C and knowing how to build for retail. When you're going to scale into retail, you have a mind shift that needs to take place within the company around how to plan a lot longer time frame, right? So when I'm going to present something to Target or Walmart, I need to present that to them at least 6 months before they're going to even put it on their shelf. So that means that my innovation pipeline needs to be even earlier. So it's really the idea of being able to think much farther ahead than you might be used to doing. The other thing is, resource shifting. So a lot of times in D2C, you're focused a little bit more on performance marketing, and that's the right thing to do for that channel. I really love some of Mitch's points in the beginning about being careful not to focus too much on ROAS, really important. Make sure you're building your brand equity, but when you're really scaling fast, you're growing a brand through massive increases in household penetration, right? You are filling the funnel so fast with new users, and that's how you want to scale a brand. That kind of growth takes investment in multiple different resources. The ad you saw there, needs to go on CTV, but you also need to surround it with an ecosystem of creator, of every kind of social media you can think of, even out of home, radio, whatever you choose in your marketing mix. But you need to help the company realize that there needs to be a sea change in resources and in the people that know how to deploy those resources.
So now, what is your largest distribution channel?
Our largest distribution channel, because of the volume that it does, is club, and our second largest is mass. So, Walmart and Target.
That's amazing. Yeah, we loved it when it hit the Costco shelves. So, quick answer: is Costco easy to work with or difficult to work with?
Costco is special.
Good answer. Good answer. Politically correct. Yeah, I've heard that it can be a challenge. I mean, they're great for the consumer. It can be a little challenging with the brands.
Yeah, I mean, Costco is they're an amazing partner for us. They have their, just as I was mentioning earlier, they have their thresholds, right? You need to be able to meet the velocity thresholds. And sorry, velocity is sort of a term that we use in CPG to suggest how quickly is your item turning off of the shelf. So velocity is number one in CPG, and they have their expectations around what you need to be able to sell in order to stay. So a lot of times you'll see things rotate in and out of Costco. That's because sometimes they're just testing an item, or maybe it was meeting thresholds okay, but not enough to be a national brand. And we are lucky enough fortunate enough to have the experience of being a national brand with Costco with a couple different items now.
That's amazing. Well, hopefully all of us can help continue that and buying the products at Costco.
Thank you for your support.
Awesome. Okay, Daniel, I wanted to go to you. So everyone in this room has had a growth phase that made it felt like it was going to break the company. So were we growing too fast? Did we make the wrong hires, the wrong channel, a bet that didn't land? So if you look back in your experience, is there a moment you'd go back and handle differently? And what do you know now that you wish someone had told you then?
Oh man, I can only pick one. I think there's probably a dozen of them over the past 9 months. I think ultimately it's not the growth that breaks the company. I think it's the ambiguity. With someone like Austin, the thing is that you have everyone that wants a piece of him in some way. You have so many people that want to partner, so many opportunities that you look at and you're like, oh, we should do that, we should do this, we should do this. And then next thing you know, you've got 5 different competing priorities on the table. And, similar to what Megan was saying, where she has to have 6 months ahead of time, right? Ours is seasonal too. And so when we go into retailers, we have to be selling on season. And so when you try to take that 24-month lead time and compress it into 5 months, yeah, that's not fun. That's not fun. The team was working a lot, 7 days a week basically to pull that off. So I think in hindsight, I would have simplified that priority list dramatically and just paced ourselves a little better. Just because it becomes, there's just so many competing things coming in, and these aren't small companies, they're not small brands. You've got major fashion labels, Valentino, Yves Saint Laurent, they all want to have some piece of this. And every one of them, you're like, we should go do that, we should go do that, we should go do that. Now you've got, half a dozen of these huge partnerships that you have to try to execute on. It's a challenge.
That's crazy. I remember hearing, maybe it was from you, that like after the runway show, right, the fashion show, a department store that usually takes years and years and years to get into, like big brands, big name brands are trying to get in there, and they came to you afterwards and like, we want you.
Yeah, it was interesting. So right after the show had wrapped, I mean, we were still in the back kind of celebrating the win. We met with Selfridges. If anybody knows Selfridges, #1 retailer in the world. And he comes up to me and he says, hey, can we pretend that we've been talking about this for 6-7 months so we can fast track this and get it into our shop? And of course, I'm like, absolutely. Selfridges is very, very, very selective on the brands that they will pull in. And we were able to do that off season. And to my knowledge, it's unprecedented the amount of press that we got on an off season launch, which we thought would work. We hoped would work, kind of like the skip button. We hoped that we could make that work, and yeah, it worked out really well.
That's amazing. Well, I'm still saving up my money. There's a $1,600 jacket that I think I'd look great in, so we'll see how that goes.
We'll set one aside for you.
I appreciate it. Okay, for Jeff, so Angel went from a crowdfunded startup to a publicly traded company with over 2 million guild members, and they trust you to make decisions for them on their behalf. So going public changes what you can say, how transparent you can be, how you operate day to day. So what's actually different now? And with 2 million guild members who trusted you with both their money and their values, what have you felt the most pressure to protect?
All we're thinking about is like going on the New York Stock Exchange is, for our team, just the starting line. When you're doing media, studio distribution, theatrical distribution, you're playing in the hundreds of millions of dollars to billions, and so you have to have access to a lot of capital. So we see that as the starting line. And then when the way that the guild members are, they're not really trusting me in this case. I don't think anybody trusts. I've made some good decisions. Like I brought in The Chosen. I brought in Dry Bar Comedy. I made some good Tuttle Twins. These are all really big shows. But I realized really quickly, in Hollywood, there are a dozen people who make 95% of the decisions about all the stuff you see in theaters and all the stuff you see online. It's just a very small group of gatekeepers. And there was this realization that they're getting it wrong 80% of the time, over 80% of the time. Over 80% of movies that go to theaters do not make money. They lose money. And the way I had been reading this book called The Wisdom of Crowds, it's an older book by James Surowiecki, and in it, he talks about how crowds, like he shows it in the math that crowds can make better decisions than experts. And he gives an example of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. He gives a bunch of different examples, but one of them is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, there's 3 lifelines. One is 50-50, one is ask the audience, and one is ask a friend or an expert. You ask the most expert person you know.
It was on the other line ready to Google it.
Yeah, well, yeah. And then the experts got it right 61% of the time. The audience got it right 91% of the time. And so the way we look at this is we say the experts can be good, but the audience is going to be much better. And so what we built is a system where every single film that comes to Angel Studios, every single film that goes to theaters has to be voted on by the Angel Guild. And so as a guild member, you actually pay $20 a month to get to vote. And then you get early access to the content, and you get 2 movie tickets to go to theaters, to every single movie you vote on. And you pay for the privilege of being able to vote and be part of the process of making the movies with the filmmakers. And so you're in the post-production process. And so some filmmakers submit a movie and it just gets rejected or accepted. Then there's other filmmakers who go in and submit, get feedback, and then they do it again, and then they do it again, and they take the guild's feedback until they get the movie right. And so this process, what it's done is it created a system where now we have by far the largest average box office of any independent studio domestically. We're a top 10 domestic distributor. We have 2.2 million guild members right now, and they're paying an average, because there's a lower tier and a higher tier, but they're paying an average of just below $14 a month. And they're funding the content, they're taking it in, they're voting on it, and I, as an executive in the company, I can't even take a movie into Angel unless they first pass it. Meaning they're the veto. If they say no to something, it cannot come on Angel. And it doesn't mean they're going to be right 100% of the time. But as a consumer, when you watch Angel, we can see in the data, the vast majority of the time, you're going to like your experience of what you watch. And the majority of the time, you're going to love what you watch, which is a significantly, like, most of the stuff you watch on Netflix, you don't love. You don't even like necessarily.
Look at the Rotten Tomatoes ratings on any of your films.
That's right.
That shows it.
We have the highest Rotten Tomatoes audience scores of any studio by, I think, almost 10 points.
That's amazing. Excuse me. So I want to shift. You really can't even have a conversation these days and go a few sentences in before somebody starts talking about AI. So I want to kind of shift to AI and just have a quick discussion there. But I did want to take the last opportunity to highlight the Angel brand here with a cool video.
Open your eyes.
Picture, if you will, a world where it is light.
Expand your mind to an entirely new reality.
Wow, pretty great, huh?
After today, our lives will never be the same.
This is our time.
That's what I'm talking about.
Keeping us hope.
We can change things. You just have to take the first step. Oh, well, this is gonna be big. Yeah, we're
not done yet.
We can join together and finally be free.
Animals run the farm! What could possibly go wrong?
Who does own this land? If not the one who has the will to tame it.
My name is George Washington.
There is a little girl that's very sick, and you're delivering her a new liver.
How much does one of those go for in the black market?
$1 million, maybe?
$1 million?
Go!
President Reagan got the Russians to the table. But if we fail here, there will be war. If you can't make them see the light, make sure they feel the heat. Horses is born wild, usually stay wild.
They claim a great king should take my throne. Snuff out the darkness, and the light of honor will shine. Things are about to get a whole lot better.
Look at all the lights.
It's such amazing content. So my household, we're huge consumers of Angel content, and we use VidAngel nonstop. Literally, we won't watch a movie in my house without using the VidAngel platform, because we still have, some young kids at home as well. So Jeff, I'm going to come right back to you on this. So, AI, how is it actually showing up in your organization? So you mentioned Angel's using AI across the engineering, the creative, and the art side, which is pretty unique. I think a lot of companies are maybe using one of those and focusing on one area with the use of AI, but you guys are doing it across the board. So where is it actually changing the organization and showing up within your organization?
It's everywhere. So we have an entire AI engine that's internal to our company that any executive, any employee can just start asking questions, and they can pull up charts and they can pull up data from anywhere in the entire data pool. And that's been, basically we were able to, when I talked to the guys at HBO Max, they have 50 engineers just on their data stuff, and our group is tiny, and we don't have to, because they're getting requests for data, and we don't have to do that. The AI goes and just gets all the data for everybody, and so there's that space. Then we have on the engineering front, a lot of people think that jobs are just going to be lost, but there's a lot of people even concerned in Angel that jobs would be lost. But I just take a completely different view of this, is that anytime, if you go back all the way to Malthusian, you go to what's his name, who wrote The Population Bomb, everybody's always been predicting that there's going to be these huge catastrophic events because of technology. And every time they've been wrong, comically wrong. Every single time, and I think Elon's wrong on this one. When you have these, an example would be photography. So if you go back to the 60s, 70s, photography, you buy a nice camera, you get the film, you figure out all the lighting, there's a ton of engineering and understanding of the technicalities of it. And then you had to go into a red room, and you had to develop the film, and then getting red eye out of the film would be almost impossible. Editing them was extremely difficult. And then Photoshop comes along, and there's this huge pipeline of people just to get film to your door, the 1-hour photos from Walgreens or whatever, Walmart, whatever. All this is gigantic pipeline. And so you would think that Photoshop and these types of things would destroy a lot of jobs. But what it did, and the progress of Photoshop to phones to other programs, has turned a few hundred thousand photographers into 1 billion photographers. And so it's just expanded. And so what we're seeing at Angel is we have 90 engineers working on all kinds of apps. We have apps across all of the different platforms and different languages. And those 90 engineers, what's happening this last 12 months is we're going from 90, there's 300 employees at Angel, and we're seeing all of them become engineers because Claude Code and Codex. And you just saw Grok is buying, this morning they announced they're buying Cursor. And for $60 billion, they're paying more for Cursor than they paid for Twitter. But what's happening is everybody's going to become a coder. Coding, like the cost of code is going to zero. And so we're going to have billions of coders. That's what's going to happen. They're not coders, but they're developers. And then the same thing, it's going to take a little bit longer, but not much, inside of movies, is that rather than the movie industry for decades has been a rich person's sport. It is the children, by and large, it's the children of very wealthy people who come into the industry. They want to create something meaningful, and they're able to get into that industry because of their connections and because they have wealth behind them, and they can be patient. The average person, like growing up on a farm in Idaho, we don't even touch this world of filmmaking. That's already been changing with YouTube, but now with AI, instead of having 400,000 craftsmen that work in the Hollywood space, it's going to be millions of craftsmen. And instead of 1,000, like if you look at that slate, we've got huge actors, tons of them, but almost all of those movies were made outside of Angel. This is what people don't understand is there are 1,000 independent movies made every single year for hundreds of millions of dollars by rich people that just create movies because they want them to exist, and they don't find a home. And so the Guild goes through and sifts through these movies and finds the ones that fit us, and that's kind of the first phase of Angel. Sound of Freedom had been sitting on the shelf for 8 years and just couldn't find a home. And so you're in this space where you have 1,000 movies right now made in a very expensive way. It's going to turn into, like, I would predict maybe even before the end, probably for sure before the end of the year, we're going to start seeing our first AI-driven films submitted and feature-length films submitted into Angel Guild. And then we're going to see a tsunami. And it's going to be, instead of 1,000 movies made a year, there's going to be 10,000 movies made a year. Then there's going to be 100,000 movies made a year. And because everybody has access, and now they can create stuff that looks amazing with smaller resources. And the actors, I know the actors are freaking out about this because they see these AI faces online going viral. But what they don't realize is if you have let's say it's 10,000 movies just in English, because it's 1,000 movies in English, 100,000 movies worldwide, feature-length movies, high-quality movies, then what happens is, how do they get the word out? How do they get people to actually watch their movies when there's so many of them? Because you can't watch all of them. And they're going to need actors. They're going to need people with networks. They're going to need people with distribution. They're going to need faces that people recognize. So they'll start at the top, and then they're going to start working their way down. And people who used to be at the bottom of the totem pole will now be moving up. And so I think we're moving into a golden age of creativity. And I think that actors don't need to worry. The ones who have to adjust to big time is all the CGI artists and editors.
Yeah, it's amazing. And speaking of creativity, Megan, we talked with you a little bit about how it's showing up in your organization. You said it's really geared more on the creative side and synthetic audiences and things like that. Maybe talk to us a little bit about what's really working, what you would suggest to other people out there.
Yeah, so we do use it in creative. I think the point was made earlier about, the best shortcut is to try to reduce some of the redundancy and busy work. So we use it in applications where, look, we need a little help writing some copy, or we want to get a little bit more creative with a certain angle on positioning of a campaign. So I think we use it a lot in that regard, but it's really important, the point that was made earlier about authenticity. People can see right through it when it's fake. And particularly when we're trying to connect we have a low-tech product, right? We're trying to get everybody to eat a Built Bar. And so, just making sure that we're being mindful of that authenticity when we're creating is really important. We do use it as well in customer experience, like customer service, right? When we're having people contact us about orders, we're using it there. Where I think where we're starting to think about is more in synthetic audiences, right? Whenever I launch something, I test a lot around it to understand how it's going to perform. And so there are the capabilities out there to use, AI audiences to simulate what people would say. That's where the risk is higher, right? And you have to really understand whether you're being led in the right direction by AI, because it's a huge risk. You're investing sometimes tens of millions of dollars in equipment that's going to make something that you're making a very big bet on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to ask Daniel the final question here in this round. But I wanted to tell the audience, if you have a question, we're going to give you an opportunity. So after Daniel answers, we'll let you ask any questions. So Megan talks about authenticity, right? The Post Malone, the Austin Post brand is all about authenticity. So how do you and your organization, obviously you want to use things to be faster and put things out there, but there's this bit of a risk. How do you guys use it at Post Malone's companies?
Yeah, so we have a pretty simple rule. AI can accelerate the work, but it cannot author the soul. So the idea is that we can amplify, we do the same thing. We have synthetic audiences and things like that. We will definitely use it for lots of different iterations through our pattern making and things like that. But when it comes down to what we're actually going to be putting out there for people, what the product is ultimately going to look like, it all comes through Austin, because we can't lose that connection to him and what he's after, because that's the world that we're building.
100%. Do we have any questions from the audience you'd like to ask this panel? We got a question out back or something? Please, yeah.
Yeah, my question is for Mr. Harmon. So you mentioned you're going to get a huge influx of, AI movies. Are you at all fearing for, a lack of creativity? AI uses everything that's already out there. So, you tell it to make a movie. Obviously, your output is only as good as your input. But do you fear at all for, AI just reusing all these other ideas for movies and, slightly tweaking it? I feel like we've seen it kind of across the superhero movies. It's all across the interdimensional, yada, yada, yada. They're cranking them out crazy fast, but the quality, I think, has gone down a lot. So are you worried about creativity at all with these AI movies?
2 weeks ago, I was on the Rick Rubin podcast, and he made a statement. He said there was slop before AI and there's slop after AI. That same graph exists of there's a whole bunch of copycat stuff, and if you're in the copycat space, you probably, like I've been saying for a while, like if you're in the elevator music making space, your job is dead. And that is a symbol of like lots of different spaces where if you're copying other things, all the robot work is going to be done by robots. And when you look at one of our team members, my right-hand guy, he always says, AI only works when you can get the namaste effect. Namaste means the soul in me sees the soul in you. And this is the reason why you see AI that just looks like complete slop, and then you see other stuff that you're like, wow, that looks really good. When it looks really good, it's because they did motion capture on a real face, like James Cameron, and their face looks right. It has all the things correct. And so anything that's on camera, anything that the audience should look at should be a real face, even if it's wrapped in another face. There needs to be a real actor behind it and a real voice, or else it just won't work. And I'm not too worried. I think Rick Rubin's nailed it. He's one of the best creatives. He's one of the best producers there's ever been for music. But he says there's slop before, there's slop after, and it's just the good artists are going to figure out how to use it and make it good, and they're going to recognize when it's bad, and the bad artists won't figure it out, and they'll either have to get better or they won't be able to play in that space. So I'm not actually. I just think when you have tons of competition, because the cost of the technical difficulty of creating something disappears, then it all becomes story and authenticity. When you remove all the robotic work, and every single person in this room within a year or two will be able to remove it all if they just want to put their mind to it, then the technical side has been removed, and it's all about the storytelling side and the artistic side.
Awesome. Do we have one more question from the audience? If not, I've got one over here. Feel the mic coming? Okay.
Okay, my question is for Daniel. So, hearing you talk about your company with Austin Post, it seems like you have more of the opposite problem of not having enough opportunity. It seems like you have endless amount of people that want to work with you. So when it really gets down to the nitty-gritty of those few brands that you're looking at, is there something in particular that you guys are looking for when you actually do end up choosing a brand that you want to work with?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of things that we consider. Because we have so many opportunities, we could kind of be everywhere, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to be in the right places for the right people. And so as big brands come and want to do some sort of collaboration, we look at the brand's history, we look at the story, we want to make sure that there's an authentic connection. So for example, with some of the luxury brands, if Austin has not been a patron in the past, that's automatically like, it doesn't make sense. If he didn't already connect with them in some way, we don't want to pursue that. But if he did, then it's about where do they see that collaboration going? And is it going to keep Austin's voice intact with that collaboration? And so we have to go through a number of meetings to kind of decide and discern what it is that they're wanting to have happen. Most of the time, what they're looking for is that uptick in Austin's, audience. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that that's not the target, that they can see a real connection between where Austin Post is going and their brand.
Thank you.
Amazing. Okay, so we're kind of getting near the end of our time. I want to go to a closing with a lightning round. So one sentence or one word answers here. We'll just go down, start here with Megan and come down to Jeff. So one channel you feel like you're under-investing in right now.
Reddit.
Love it. Reddit's changed a lot recently, and that's a great investment.
In real life experiences.
Okay.
In real life.
In real life experiences. Okay, love it.
I mean, we're doing some, but we need to do more.
Yeah. Okay, the metric that matters more than any other in your business, Megan.
Velocity.
Same.
Watch time.
Watch time, love it. Okay, next, most overrated growth strategy in B2C today, Megan.
This one's hard. I think it's things that are just too bottom funnel focused, so too conversion focused.
I love that answer.
I would say the one-off influencer, the paid, where you pay him for one post. Yeah.
No pun intended there on the post.
That's right. Yeah.
Jeff.
Influencers, I think, is.
Okay, I hope we're not many influencers out there. Don't feel too bad, I guess.
Not completely, but there's.
Yeah, no, for sure. Totally get it. They can get very expensive, and what's the impact really, right? Yeah. Okay, next, what does a brand have to be in 2026 to earn real loyalty?
I mentioned earlier, authenticity.
Yeah, same. Authenticity, but I would just say that's why I said in real life experiences, because what we've seen with what happened in Selfridges, when people go in, they can see, they can touch the product, it creates a whole different connection.
Real life is like, this is the reason why we're so focused on theatricals, is because it's the average theater goer is now younger than the average TikToker. People aren't aware of that. That the younger generation wants off of the algorithms and they want in-person experiences in real life.
Love it. Okay, so we're ending here. We have 30 seconds for each of you, and we'll start with Jeff and go down and end with Megan. What do you want people in this room to leave with today?
Adopt AI. Don't be afraid of it. It's going to be a tsunami over the top of you, or you can try to ride it.
I would say the same thing. You have to adopt it, no question, but make sure that you keep the human voice behind it, because that's going to be the thing that is going to change. To his point, talking about the creative process, there's been slop before, slop after, all that stuff. That's totally true. So just make sure you keep your human element in that.
I'm going to go to a totally different direction. I would say surround yourself with really strong talent. And I'll take it back to the Jen who was speaking earlier. Obviously, she wasn't summiting without a strong team behind her, right? And she mentioned the Pakistani woman that she took to the top. And so I think just surround yourself with really good, talented people, and you'll all get there together. Big success takes big teams, and you know, that's the fun of it, right? Is being along for the ride with people who are sharing in your success.
Amazing. Well, speaking of talent, you are all such talented individuals and an inspiration to all of us. Like, we sincerely appreciate you being here today with such amazing brands of which I'm a consumer and have been for a long time. And I would invite all of you to go check it out. Like, if you haven't seen some of the videos from the Harmon brothers, you will have a great afternoon if you go check out Squatty Potty, I promise. So with that, please join me in giving them a warm round of applause.